I felt so angry under the surface, so resentful that I had this identity and belief that I had to keep living this particular way in order to get by, to survive. And I didn't have any other options. I felt trapped. I felt stuck. Like it would just be too much, too overwhelming, too scary to take steps outside of that box and to create a new life for myself. I just felt like, how could I start all over again? And that was because I hadn't worked on healing my nervous system. I was aware that I had some higher ideals, but I didn't have the foggiest clue of how to start living those ideals because I still felt like I had to pay all these bills. And it's a reality. When I finally started to disrupt that belief system and identity, and I started to do some somatic work and begin to heal my nervous system, it's a slow process. I'm still working on that. But the biggest change for me was realizing that I actually really had a choice. And I was going to continue to suffer so long as I continued to stay afraid of feeling tension. I was going to continue to stay resentful, angry under the surface. I didn't show it outwardly, but I certainly did inwardly. It was seething under the surface. And I would vent to my partner at the time too about that. But when I realized that I truly did have a choice, when I realized that I can choose a new identity, it's within my control. And even if I have to keep a 9 to 5 job for a while, I can choose to take my off time on my weekends whenever I have in the evenings. I can take time to start that higher calling that I actually feel passionate about. I can start to do the work that matters to me, whether that be writing. For some of us, it might be we've always wanted to write a novel, right? And we've never tried or stepped into that. Oh, I don't have time. I have to do this job. I have to keep making a living in this way and too exhausted after the work day. And there would be all of these reasons not to do work that I actually feel called to do. So that might, I don't know what that is for you. Like, think for me, YouTubing is a big part of that. There are other pieces to that puzzle too, but certainly the work that I'm doing here and now with you is part of that. But taking that choice and that courage to just start doing something that feels more heart and soul aligned, taking time to heal your nervous system so you can start to feel a little bit more comfortable and safe while you're doing things that at first are going to feel very scary or risky or uncomfortable. It's all about putting in the reps. It's all about frying. The gym is another good metaphor for this. Like there was a time in my life where I was actually quite sedentary and I really didn't even like moving very much. And I was a bit overweight too. And even had a bit of a food addiction at one point in my life too, because I was like, this was also during the time that felt very stuck. So I would try to eat away my resentment and anger. Oh, if I just relax enough on my off time, maybe I'll feel better. And if I just and actually I just ended up feeling more and more exhausted and uncomfortable and like lost certain will to do like other things, take really good care of myself. Like it was my outer world of how I was overgiving and caring so much for others on the surface. Like I actually mirrored that back by like not taking care of myself adequately. I would come home and zone out. I would go into these states of very sedentary, sitting around, maybe watching too many movies, just eating comfort food. And as a result, I didn't feel healthy. I felt unhealthy. I felt uncomfortable in my own skin. I felt very lethargic, like it was hard to move. I would sometimes just put on uh, certain meditation type videos to help myself just feel a little bit better, but that was a bit of a spiritual bypassing. So I called it blissing out at the time. And I would put on like these higher vibrational, which was one of the nicer things I guess you could do in that if you're feeling really low, but if you're using it to bypass your deeper emotions and to just like skirt over the resentment and the anger that's inevitably there, so you could numb out around it and using food to numb out around it as well as inactivity and just kind of sitting in my own lethargy, then that wasn't actually taking good care of myself. That wasn't loving myself. That was more abandonment. That was more bypassing what I really needed to do for myself, which was to get my butt up and out, to get moving, to go for walks, to go to the gym, to go to a yoga class. This was about 6 years ago. I've been going to yoga classes, fitness classes about 4 days a week ever since and feeling so much better, so much stronger. Even started some weightlifting. Like I feel healthy and fit and strong and I love it. And I wouldn't go back to the way that was for anything. I love having this newfound strength. I love feeling healthy and slender. I just feel so much more vital. I have so much more energy for life. I can lift heavy planters and pots and do all sorts of things like when I'm in the garden. And there's just a lot more care and attention for my life and for my goals. Like, I also, at the same time that I started caring for myself on that physical level by going to the gym more, by doing more somatic work, by doing more healthy kind of meditations, not just checking out, but the kind of meditation that helped me to move energies that were very repressed, suppressed out of my body more. Not as like, oh, you got to get out of my body energy. No, but like, because part of the process of working with these energies that's very important to acknowledge is to allow and welcome, at the same time, allow them to be there, but to, with a nurturing presence, a loving presence, allow them to also move instead of just stagnate and stay repressed and become and remain unconscious of those energies. I became much more conscious of the resentment I was carrying, quite a lot of resentment, especially towards my family situation, my father. Obviously, that very much reflected in the rest of my life and the work that I chose and a lot of the romantic relationships I chose earlier on. I created more situations for me to feel resentment because that's what I was addicted to. That's what was seething under the surface for me. But when I started about four-ish, yeah, I would say about 4 or 5 years ago, when I started to work with those energies more, when I started to give myself what I really wanted, I gave myself the gift of movement, of regular exercise, of not enabling myself to linger around in a lethargic state, in an immobile state with lots of excuses of why I couldn't because of how hard my job was and how stressful and difficult and overwhelming and my life was. And I gave myself the gift of beginning to garden because I love the soil and I love how it feels to put my hands in the soil and the nurturing feeling of connecting with Mother Earth in that way. When I gave myself the gift of more consistently making healthy food for myself, doing that somatic work, that mindful somatic work that allowed me to attune and attend to those energies that were within me, those resentments, that anger, that fear also of starting to do things that were basically the opposite of abandoning myself, but caring for myself deeply. All of that self care, putting myself first, really helped to shift things for me, really allowed me to show up for myself in a new way and create a new identity, an identity that wasn't compulsive anymore, that wasn't so, I have to be this way for others. I found myself being able to set more boundaries with people. The more I allowed and felt the resentment and became aware of it and allowed it to move out of my body and held myself and cried and allowed my body to release and at times shake this energy off, to breathe with that energy. Holotropic breath work can be another very helpful tool. Peter Levine has beautiful somatic experiencing meditations that you could try. Alyssa Briga is another one that I recommend. So I sat with people like that in their meditations, and I allowed that energy to nurture myself. And I learned how to also, even when I didn't have that, one of their meditations up in front of me as a guided meditation, I learned how to do that for myself, to sit with myself, to love myself in a way that I wasn't before, that I was checking out before. I was trying to numb, and that was pushing that energy down even more. That repressed anger and rage, that resentment, deep resentment, this rage at how the world had treated me and treated so many other people. And it kind of amplified that victim mentality, that feeling of being stuck in life and not feeling like I had a way out. But gradually, as I kept showing up for myself more and more, I allowed myself to also open to new types of work that were more aligned with my authentic soul, like the work I'm doing here. So, this is my invitation. I'm going to encourage you to do some reflective journaling, whether that's in written form. Ideally, written form can help a lot with that, but some of us may prefer to just reflect on this. Maybe we don't have to write it down necessarily, but I would encourage you to. Can help to get it out on paper, just to get that pen and paper out and just start writing. But to be clear with yourself of what are you committed to? What is your current identity that you are showing the world right now? That what is that current identity that you perform compulsively? What is it committed to? Maybe do that in one column over here. And then in the other column, write down what are your values? What do I really value? What do I really want in life? And how might that identity, the identity that values integrity and authenticity and showing up for yourself, basically the opposite of abandoning yourself, what does this identity express? How does this identity that is authentic, it's capable of being authentic every day in the world and caring for yourself, first and foremost, how does this identity show up in the world? What does this identity value? What kind of actions and activities does this identity do and take? Does this identity cook healthy meals for myself? Does this identity meditate on a daily basis in a way that's actually not a further route of escapism? Because sometimes I did get caught up in this. There are those little subtle spiritual traps where it might be a better form of escapism. There are some types of meditation that actually invite us further to check out or numb out a little bit if spiritual, really like bypassing certain realities that are still in your body for the sake of still presenting a certain way in the world. Something I experienced at a later stage of moving into becoming my more authentic self and creating a healthier identity for myself was finding some spiritual gurus to align with in order to bliss out a lot and bypass actually feeling what was in my body. So I was performing and enacting like this higher spiritual ideal that actually was aligned with being further needless and desireless and more kind of presenting this perfect spiritual image, this selfless person or spiritual devotee or whatever that would be. That can also be sometimes a trap too. So it's just helpful to be aware of that it can be. It isn't, I'm not saying it always is. So I'm not saying abandon whatever. If you're part of a spiritual community, that can be a really beautiful thing. And I highly encourage that. But I'm just also encouraging you to be aware of how you're engaging with that. And if you might be using that community or the identity of being a spiritual seeker, perhaps, as just one more way to bypass or overlook and continue to push down those emotions. If you're a people pleaser, oftentimes that's a deep resentment or a rage or an anger. And for others, it might look more like depression, might look more like a lot of fear, and fear is often entangled with these other emotions too. So that's something to be aware of, as is shame, especially if you've experienced some narcissistic abuse in your life. So I just want to leave you with that to do some reflecting on your current self image. Maybe you will also want to reflect on some past self images that you've had that you may have outgrown, and your most current identity and what the values are, or what you're committed to. And then an identity that you actually feel is more authentic for you or that you desire. And what would that identity look like? What is this higher identity that you desire to take on? What is that identity committed to? And what does that identity, that version of you, what is it committed to? What does it value? So you can choose a new identity and thus a new reality as a result of aligning with that new identity, a completely new you. So I just want to leave you with that one last thought. Your identity creates your reality. So if we change at the level of identity, if we align with those higher values, those higher commitments, and we actually start to live in that way, not just idealize it over here in the clouds, but actually take action in alignment with that higher identity, this identity that maybe goes to the gym every other day, right? This identity that always cooks healthy food for yourself, this identity that's willing to move beyond, an identity that feels more true and authentic for you, that would feed your heart and soul in a new way. And the way to do that is to take action in alignment with your identity and continue to see yourself through this new lens, through this new vantage point of this is who I am now, and to take consistent action in alignment with that. And if you do have a moment of falling back, which we all do at times, like, don't beat yourself up. Just start again, begin anew, keep going to yourself. This is human. It's okay that I had a moment, I had a day, I had a week even where I was just really off this week or this day at this moment. But you can always choose to begin again and be kind to yourself, nurture yourself in those moments, and realize that you have the power to choose a new you and a new reality. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.